really have a very large topic to speak about. I feel like a child who is wearing the garment of his father. He really does not know the topic I'm going to talk about is so wide, and I don't know what to say and to make it suitable for a group of different people and different specializations and abilities. I would like to talk in general about psychology, how it went through various stages. Now, the first stage was a stage in which psychology had this strong enmity towards religion and spirituality. And they felt that after the church has been defeated and the scientific revolution came into being, and it achieved so many great discoveries and inventions, that they are looking forward to anything which is looks scientific new in order to make a big change in the lives of people. And I think this was mentioned by Freud, he himself. He said that Copernicus came to tell the world that the Earth is not the center of the solar system or of the universe. And he was able to humiliate people who used to think, which according to him, of course, this was out of religion, that really the Earth is only a tiny speck in a very large universe. So the scientific revolution came with after the work of Copernicus. We see Freud thinking of himself as the third great discoverer, the third great scholar who has changed the world. The first one is Copernicus, and the second is Darwin, who told man, who was feeling he is selected by God, he is important, to tell him you are only an animal. You just evolved from apes. There is no difference between you and other animals except the large brain that you have. And then he said, then came psychoanalysis. So he thought of himself as the third great power that is going to change the world. Man used to think of himself as selected, not different from animals, to think of himself as a rational being. He comes to say, you are only run with your unconscious desires. And the desires are mainly sexual and aggressive. So he thought that he is going to change the world. Like these two people. Though, of course, the evolution theory of Darwin is still receiving a lot of criticisms, but of course at that time people were ready to accept it as true. And that is why people who were anxious to get rid of religion and to see that the miracles of science, they wanted something to take over from religion. Of course, they could see in developing physics, developing chemistry, developments in these scientific areas, but they still have this longing to religion. What all of a sudden Christianity was everything, and all of a sudden it is not there. Catholicism. So there must be a religion that takes the place of religion, a new movement. And that is why people accepted Freud so much at that time. Because he actually came to use the same tactics of Catholicism, of religion, use the same methods, but give it a secular, non-spiritual dimension. For example, in every church, there is something called the confessionary, where a man will come or a woman will come through a window, and small window, and the priest will not be sitting at right angle to her, listening to her, and then she will say, "Father, I have done so, I have done so." She confesses. She speaks about herself in secrets which will not be told to other people, but to the priest. Then the priest will ponder and say, "Anyway, God has accepted you. Jesus is happy with you." So she walks out of the church happy. My sins have been forgiven. I'm okay. Now Freud came to do the same thing. The same thing. A person lies down, talks about anything, tell him about his secret. He comes to pinpoint, supposedly, to pinpoint his unconscious motivations and instincts, and then to come to tell him, "Yeah, everybody, this sex is part of you. You are just an animal. What did you do after all? You have an sexual infringement. This is only natural because you are an animal." And then he goes on to show him that it's okay, it's okay. The person will go out of the clinic just like that one who went out of the church, happy and feeling, "Oh, after all, I didn't do something. Everybody is doing it and I'm happy." Now, the important thing is that this worked for some time, but it could not work for a long time. People discovered that quite a lot of what Freud said is not rational. I must tell you about my own experience. Because I am so old, I have seen the changes in psychology. Practically, I have seen them. In 1954, I came to take my first course in psychology. And the lecturer used to tell us about Oedipal complex, about what do you call it, other talks of funny things about that people, your personality will be developed from the way you have been weaned when your mother used to give you her breast to drink milk. But now when the way you are taught how to toilet train will develop, whether you are going to be a miser, or whether you will be a generous person, or whether you will develop an anal personality. You become obsessional in preparing everything to be well ordered. Now this is, to me, when I was a student in my 20s, I would talk with my American professor. Yeah, this is not, cannot be true. And this is not even rational. How can you tell me that if the child just passes food in the right place in the pot, then his mother says, "Oh, what a great boy," then he will think that this thing that he took out of his body is something great, and that he did a great thing, and this will make him, when he's an adult, begin to spend money here and there and become a generous person. And if he keeps it against the will of the mother, then he will be an anal retentive. The first one is anal expulsive. The second one is anal retentive, and he will become a miser. He will keep everything, his money, everything, when he grows up. Now, What a funny relationship. I used to talk to him about how come you tell me that all human beings, all male boys in the whole world develop sexual love to the mother. Just call it intimacy, but to call it sexual, why do you use the word sexual? He said, this is science. This is science he has proved. And I couldn't say. I said, this is not proper, And then he would say to me, okay, if you have an alternative to this, bring it. There was no alternative. So, but gradually the alternative came. And the behavioral revolution came into being. And they wanted psychology to become pure science. Stimulus response. Everything is based on a stimulus and its response. This is an exaggeration, it is not true, but it was able to defeat the Freudian thought. And this, they attacked Freud terribly. Read the works which was published maybe in the 50s or so by a British professor called Ising. He had written 3 books, Sense and Nonsense in Psychology, Fact and Fiction in Psychology, and the third one is, I forgot the third book, but it has also a catchy title. And then he showed that he made a very important experiment in which he compared patients who received psychoanalytically oriented therapy and those who did not receive any therapy at all. Why? Because the beds in the hospitals there were not enough beds for all people with psychological disorder. So those who were not accepted and told to wait, he gave tests before and tests afterwards. And he discovered that those people who received psychoanalytically oriented therapy, after 1 year, 2/3 of them improved. But then he discovered those who received no therapy, also 2/3 of them, or a little bit more, improved. So it is as good as nothing. This was a blow on the face of psychoanalysis. Then behavior therapy came and showed the great fallacies in Freudian therapy. People who had phobias and who were told that they are all sexual in nature, and they would go to the psychoanalyst 5 times a week, and at times some people for years they have been treated through this fallacy. And then when Wolpe came with behavior therapy and developed systematic desensitization, he found that people who used to suffer the treatment of Freud for years, they improved only in a matter of weeks, simply because he insisted that there is no symbolism in the phobia. If the person has a phobia of an animal, for example, a phobia of cats, the phobia of cat is the illness. It is not the cat is not his father, as Freud would tell you. It is not his mother. It is not his sexuality. It is not a form of all this nonsense. He will just bring a person and bring a little kitten to him. He gets accustomed to a newly born cat, and then gradually the cat grows, and the person gradually loses his fear. Or at times he uses imagination, if a thing is to be imagined, and gradually being treated. What I want to say here is that after After behavior therapy came the cognitive revolution, which made use of the computer revolution. But the important thing to us here, psychology had to change, but behavior therapy was only based on the idea of man as a machine, stimulus response. I call it the Pepsi Cola vending machine model. Everything is a stimulus and response. They were against the idea of thinking, of beliefs. They don't talk about your thought, your beliefs. They don't talk about your awareness, even your consciousness. Only what is your problem, so and so. They try to mold it into a stimulus response paradigm. But things are not every complaint can be put in a stimulus response paradigm. I have a patient, for example, she has a phobia of closed places. Whenever she is in a place which is closed, she panics. She got into a bus, and a new bus in which the doors have been closed, she started to shout. She tried to strangle the driver, bring me down, as if she's facing a lion. And he had to stop and to take her out. Now, someone asked her hand and wants to marry her, but he's in Saudi Arabia. She'll have to get into an airplane to go to him. They already made the aqd. She cannot tell the hostess in the plane, please, I have a fear of closed places, open the window for me. She can't do this. So she came to me. So I had to do this kind of systematic desensitization in imagination, relaxation, bring about something which is opposite to anxiety, relaxation, breathing, abdominal breathing, a light form of hypnosis. All of these methods, I have used it until she's very calm. Then she imagines herself in a large auditorium. Then gradually she imagines herself in a smaller and smaller and smaller room, gradually. Then I actually take her in real life to an auditorium. Then I take her to a smaller area and so on, until she was able to stand inside my cupboard. I take out the suits and I make her stand in there, and I close the door for a few seconds in the darkness of the cupboard. Can you tolerate? Yes. Okay, come out. Now I will increase the time until she was cured. Now this is possible because this can be put in a stimulus response. But if a person has a depression, he feels he's bad. He asked the hand of one woman, and he was so happy. But then her parents said, no, we want to give her to a richer fellow, get off from our side. Then what will happen to him? He told all his friends, he begins, nobody loves me, so and so. Then he begins to feel that there is something wrong with him. Why did she refuse him? Then he begins to tell himself negative things. The same thing happened to someone I treated who had a fear because he failed in his PhD examination, oral examination. And he completely collapsed, became depressed. Now, what sort of stimulus response can I use here? There is no way. You would have to change his thought. And that is where the cognitive revolution came in, to come back to consciousness that behaviorism have refused totally, to come back to the mind, because to extreme behaviorists, there is no such thing as mind. The mind can only be accepted if it is a synonym of the brain. don't talk of a mind which is spiritual or whatever. Anything that looks like spirituality, they were against it. All the area of parapsychology, telepathy, clairvoyance, they were against it. I remember in 1954, the textbook of psychology would say, this is one of the fallacies of which looks like religion, you know. Or if a person has a dream that he will see tomorrow, he will see his friend is away in another country, and then in the morning his friend comes, then we will say this is a prophetic dream. No, it's just one chance. It happened by chance. Or if you do an experimental work in which you prove telepathy, then they will say, maybe it's not, you did not make a control. They find some way in their scientific mind to annul it. But this attitude is no more. We see now psychology is changing. And that is the way is being paved for Islamic psychology. If we are going to talk about the importance of thought, and that our thought develops our emotions, and the importance of our beliefs, then how come you do not bring your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your belief in taking Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as your model? How can you avoid taking this? And indeed, it is in this area that actually now psychology is beginning to change. It's beginning to really, we can feel the changes. Not only in cognitive psychology has changed psychology, but also I think the older psychologists who were still having this stress disorder against them, they are either dead or retired or so. Younger psychologists, even in Europe and in America, are having different views. Now you can take a PhD in parapsychology. You can go to study. This was out of question. You never thought that this will happen. When at that time he said to me, I remember the lecturer telling us in 1954, only 1% or less of psychologists believe that there is anything as parapsychology. Today, there are universities that appoint people not only in parapsychology, but in only one branch of parapsychology. She is a specialist in near-death phenomena or near-death experiences. She is an expert in psychokinesis, the influence of thought on the. Not only this, but now we are getting great scholars like Scott Peck, who writes a book with the title of The Road Less Traveled, which made history in publications. For 10 years or 11 years, this book was in the bestsellers list because it speaks about spirituality and insight. He's a psychiatrist. He speaks about, and then we also have people like Herbert Benson, who was the head of the, what do you call it, the Mind Body Institute in Harvard University, coming to tell us that there are people who can use their mind, can use their thought, can use their belief in order to change their physical state. They can feel better. He went to the Himalayas with some of these worshippers, Buddhist worshippers, And they found that they are able to change the temperature of their feet, even while the temperature was getting lower and lower. So now we are getting into a different era. And this is the time where we really need to come out with Islamic psychology without feeling of inferiority. When I'm a very old man, in 1963, I gave my first lecture on Islam and psychology in the University of Jordan. At the time, I was the head of the department. And when I ended the lecture, about 13, we had 14 lecturers of psychology, all Egyptian. 13 of the 14 were very angry with me. How come you criticize Freud? How come you say so? And then they come. Psychology is, at that time, psychology was mainly Freudian. How can you dare to speak about Freud in the way you spoke? And they used to tell me, they told me at the time, after the lecture, that psychology is a pure science, like physics, like chemistry, like biology. Do you talk about kafir physics, or you talk about fasiq biology? Then why do you talk about secular psychology and other forms of psychology, Islamic psychology? What kind of Islam? What is Islamic? That was in 1963. Now, for me to get a lifetime award because of my work on Islamic psychology from the University of Southern California, to me, it is something which I wouldn't have been, it's impossible to think of or to believe. And for me to know that one of my favorite colleagues, a lady, American lady, she teaches a course on Islamic psychology. She taught a course in what do you call it, this university, Iowa State University. But still, in America, people are open-minded. They are ready to, psychologists can think. When I gave my talk on Muslim psychologists in the Lizard's Hall, a number of American psychologists, they said to me, yes, why do you want to follow us? Why do you want to imitate us? But when I went back to Saudi Arabia, where I was professor, I received the same kind of talk. Religion does not follow psychology. As soon as in Leipzig, in Germany, this scientist made the first laboratory of psychology, then psychology broke away from religion, from philosophy. You want to bring it back to this? It's not true. It is not true that psychology has divorced itself from philosophy. It is still based on philosophy, but philosophy that do not contradict with secular humanism. Now I would like to say that it is time for you not only to accept Islamic psychology in general, but to work in developing new techniques of therapy to the Muslims. I think that when people started to talk about Islamic psychology, or what they used to call Islamization of psychology, they would do what? They would only bring the same skeleton of psychology, Western psychology. the same model. And then they will put an ayah here, a hadith here. They will look for artificial similarities. And this is not an Islamic approach. This is a form, it's a form of compromise in which you feel inferior. You keep psychology as it is, but you put an Islamic ayah here. So now we should come to the point where we should develop a worldview from which psychology is to be developed, which is based on Islam itself. You cannot, I gave a talk in the International Islamic University in Malaysia in 1992. And the title of the talk became a catchphrase. I used to go to put the title of my talk is Islamizing the Islamizer. Islamizing the Islamizer. Because the Islamizers himself should have certain qualities. He should know Islam itself. You cannot go into Islamic psychology without knowing Islam. You should be able to know your own field of psychology. Not just because you cannot compete in publishing in good journals, you cannot compete in the secular field of psychology, then you retreat to Islamic psychology. No. You will have to prove yourself. You must be like Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. He first, before criticizing the philosophers, he wrote a book. What do the philosophers really want to say? Maqasid al-Falasifa. And he simplified Greek philosophy in a most beautiful manner until all the philosophers said Muslim philosophers said he is the best person. He explained our work in the best possible manner. Then after he received this distinction, then he wrote Tahafut al-Falasifa. This attacking Greek philosopher from rationality, from a spiritual approach, from a rational approach. And accordingly, we need those people who want to be working in Islamic psychology to be very well versed, to be well informed about their psychology. And then they should have some ability of creative ability. This is a gift from Allah, to be able to see what are the good sides of Western psychology, to take it, to differentiate between the nonsense of people like Freud and between a scientific psychology like learning, conditioning, like perception, like even certain aspects of personality theory. We accept, we can differentiate, to develop a Furqan between the good and the bad in Western psychology. And then to take the good and see how much it is related to Islam. I think that this creativity is requires actually a person who would consider this as his main. Am I talking too much? Is it enough for me to speak?
No, mashallah, you have the full 2 hours. You still have over an hour available. It's totally up to you, however you want to structure it, Dr. Badri. We're, at any point you can open up for a Q&A. You can continue whatever you want to do. Inshallah, we have a lot of time available for you.
You have 1 hour more. You
Yes.
still have time, and
Okay.
you can talk as much as you want.
All right. Yeah, I think that we come to this important issue. Now, what can we do about psychology now? Of course, now, Alhamdulillah, in the Western world, all this nonsense of the unscientific, the irrational theories and applications of Freud are no more accepted. To the extent that now books are being published to show that that Freud was not himself normal, and that one of the good books that you might wish to read is a book by I think her name is Thornton, and she wrote a book called Freud and Cocaine. And she proved that Freud, when he spoke about his sexual stuff, about the baby sucking his mother's breast, it has also a sexual aspect. All this nonsense about Electra complex and Oedipal complex and all this has, he was actually being addicted. These are the talks and the theories of an addicted person. It is unfortunate that still in the Islamic world, particularly in the Arab world, particularly in North African countries like Algeria and Morocco, and also in Southeast Asia, people still, if you say something about Freud, criticism, they will not accept, and they will take all what he said as it's unfortunate. But anyway, it will take some time before people really. Now, what took place now? What is the most popular form of therapy? The most popular form of therapy now is cognitive behavior therapy. And I think that it's very important that we as Muslim therapists get trained in this field to know where we need to put an Islamic approach, where we don't need to put it. For example, I told you about a person who has a phobia of driving his car after an accident or so. This is pure behavior therapy. We don't need to go into his Islamic beliefs and about his. No, we don't need to go into a cognitive aspect. This is purely behavior therapy. There are other aspects where the cognitive is important, like depression, as I mentioned. But in general, you need both. It is the marriage between the cognitive and the. But again, we need to get into the spiritual dimension. And a person, I see a woman whose husband died and she is in terrible grief. Well, how can I treat her without getting into Islam and our beliefs about death? A man who comes to me who has a phobia of death, it is impossible to treat him without going into the idea of Islam, the thought of Islam, the beliefs of Islam about death and about resurrection and about people who die are not necessarily, it is just the beginning of a new life. Death is like, as Al-Ghazali said, when you are in your mother's womb, if you have a baby in its mother's womb, and let us suppose that you can talk to him and he can understand, and you tell him, son, when you come out of your mother's uterus, you are born, you will see a different world. There is something called the sun that shines and the moon, and there are metal boxes in which people travel called car, and there is he can never imagine it, even if he can, if he has a mind, if he's aware, he cannot. Just now, if you go to a tribe in Indonesia or in Africa where people have never seen a car before, and you talk to them about the car, they will not be able to understand. While you are in your mother's in the womb, what is the most important organ to you? What is the most important thing that feeds you? It is your placenta. If you look at your navel today, you should remember that this was the source of your life. It was attached. The tube goes to the placenta to give you food and take all the waste products from you. And then you are born. Where is your placenta? This is the most important organ to you that gave you life. It is thrown away, it is buried. Nobody will go to read poetry about the placenta. You are great, you have been doing this. Nothing, khalas, it's finished. Because he goes into a different type of life, into the world. Now, in this world, where is the placenta? That you have, all of us have placentas which go around with us everywhere. The placenta is your body, your physical body, by which you can see the world and understand it and live. But when the time comes for you to die, then the body is just the placenta, is put in the grave, and you, just the way you travel from your mother's womb to a very large world in which you lived, you will also travel into a very large world in which you are going to be, to live and to be conscious of what is happening in this world. So indeed, I cannot, a woman who is really in this form about weeping about her husband dying or died, how can I only need to tell her that death, your husband is still alive at a different level. And when you join him, you will know. I think that it is impossible to use cognitive therapy with Muslims without giving it this Islamic approach. You must be aware of this. You, as trying to study Islamic psychology, you are actually doing quite a lot of benefit to all the patients that you are going to see, to all the clients, because you will give them a better therapy. Not like a person who goes, just gets a PhD and then he comes to see people for the first. He doesn't talk their language, he doesn't know them. Just as one friend wrote, if you want to a counselor to help you, don't go to one who has many letters after his name. PhD, PSSS, so and so and so. This man will not be helpful to you. Who can help you truly as a counselor is someone who looks at you as a human being, as a person having a spirit, having a soul, particularly if he has already gone through your very same problems. But a person who is a PhD, PSS, so and so, member of such and such society, will look at you as an example for research. For he's writing a paper on some people with certain disorders. You might be one of them. So indeed, I think that nobody today, I have been to South Africa, I have been to Australia, I have been to England, And in everywhere I go, I find people after I talk about an Islamic approach in psychology, psychologists will come to me. We have gotten our masters, we've gotten our PhDs, but we don't know how to work with our Muslim patients. We have been now, your lecture was an eye-opener. Is there anywhere in the world where we go to get training in this field? At that time, I used to say no. Now, there are people who are doing, but still we need an institute. An institute, for example, of Islamic cognitive therapy. Even the cognitive behavior, cognitive therapy is now beginning to change, but with the influence of Buddhism. They are acceptance, sort of contemplation is coming in. Even Western psychology, even cognitive behavior therapy is changing, because we should know this fact. We are not only treating the disorder, we are also helping the patient to be happier. At many cases, a patient will come having a special disorder, and he's treated. He has a phobia, he has an obsession, he has this, and then he is cured, he's treated, but still he's unhappy. Yet you see people who have great physical disorders, but they are happy. His leg was cut off. Allah created him very short, like a pygmy. So, but you see them happy and living their life. How come they are happy? What make them happy? What make my own people in Sudan? I go to the mosque in Durman, and in the capital of the Sudan, and I see some people talking, joking. His garment is already worn out. He's worn out because he's poor. And maybe he has only $3 or $1 in his pocket. He's going to get a cup of tea and a piece of bread to dunk it and eat it for his meal. He's poor, he's hungry, like most of these people in this. Yet he's happy. Alhamdulillah, and he laughs with his friend. He laughs and laughs until their tears come down. And then I used to go to Sweden every year. I used to go to teach during the Christmas, to give lectures on psychology and Islam. And I used to go, they would tell me, go and talk to the ladies in another big city. I go and I speak to them. And they tell me, one of my own relatives, a Sudanese, he's working as a driver of the underground train. And he said, quite from time to time we get a woman, a young woman, she's only 20, and she waits for the train to come in. She throws herself onto the rails, and the train goes over her, crushing her bones and she dies under this. Why did she kill herself? Only maybe the boyfriend refused to go with her. Only the things happened. She lost her money. Why? How come a person in Sweden, I'm told, people who are rich, they have a big Volvo car to drive, to go up the mountain, to ski, and they have a small Volkswagen to drive around in the city. He has a wife who is as beautiful as a Huriya from Jannah. And then all of a sudden you hear he took his gun and blew his brains out. Why? It means this spiritual dimension is very important. It is important for us to bring it in our therapy. How? This is very important. I will tell you in a number of cases in which I used a spiritual aspect. At times, the patients improve from 1 or 2 sessions. Wallahi al-Azim, I had one Moroccan patient. She was depressed, serious depression. She had tics, facial tics, and she had a terrible phobia of blood. And she was terribly shy and reserved and afraid of people, of other people. She was a social phobic. I haven't seen throughout my life a person who is so socially phobic like her. Until she went to work in one place and her boss sexually abused her because she cannot say no. Then she came to the hospital and God has forsaken me. God, khalas, I have no mercy from God because I am bad. And then I come to say one verse from the Quran, from Surah Al-Imran. وسارعوا إلى مغفرة من ربكم وجنة عرضها السماوات والأرض أعدت للمتقين الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والذين إذا فعلوا فاحشة. The fahisha is like zina. Those good people who Allah had prepared the paradise for are those who may make zina. But the difference is that when they do it, they remember Allah and ask for forgiveness. When I said this, her tears flew down. When she changed her conception of Allah, Allah is not the punisher. Allah still loves her. The whole picture changed. She was able in a few days to remember her children and to wish for going back out of the hospital, at least to see them and come back. She started to take care of herself. At that time, her hair was in confusion. She was in a bad shape. Now she's beginning to change. I treated her social phobia Islamically and cognitively. I used cognitive behavior therapy, but with a spiritual approach. Now let us do role playing. While she is going through the cognitive therapy, I will tell her, just imagine your husband. Her husband used to brutalize her. He used to take her money, he doesn't have a job, and force her to buy him things. Now, I use the role playing. Look here, yeah, Zainab. I am Zainab and you are the husband. Come and shout at me. Then she will shout at me. While she shouts strongly. But then I begin to speak back. Go to hell. You are supposed to feed me. You are supposed to do so as a husband. You are not doing that. And then I said, now let us shift. You are yourself and I am your husband. And then I begin to shout at her. You did not prepare this. You didn't fix the button in my shirt. And then answer now. Answer strongly. Then she answers, but in a weak way. So on. So no, this is not the way. The way is like this. I will show you. And then we go ahead until she suddenly broke. She she started to shout at him in the clinic, in the hospital, to shout and curse him, you good for nothing man. So gradually, with this to show her that you as a Muslim should not allow this to continue. Now already your conception about Allah has changed. Let us change your conception about yourself concerning Allah. It may not be a good thing for you to simply become meek and accept anything from your husband. Okay, then she does it again and again until she was really cute. And she said to me, I have already, when she came to see me after some time, she said, I already domesticated my husband. But I am not going to talk to my senior in the office who sexually abused me, because I can go to him. I can shout at him. I have no fear. But I just decided to leave that place and to ask for me to be transferred to a different place. And indeed, she was very happy. What I want to tell you here is that whenever you take cognitive behavior therapy, think about how it goes. Where is the difficulty? Where is the cognitive problem with this person sitting in front of you? Cognitively, where did he make a mistake in his relationship, his conceptions about Islam? I think that this is very, very important. And to me, for example, I feel that at times it is very important to go into the life history of good Muslims before us. One of the things that we have abandoned in our therapy is the model of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A patient of mine, when I make him relaxed, and I know he's a bit religious, but then I tell him, imagine yourself, because we use a lot of imagination in this relaxation technique. Imagine you are standing in front of the grave of the Prophet in Medina, and I see his tears flowing. I never expected that. And after that, we talk about his problem. What will the Prophet do if he faced your problem? How can you now try to behave in a way which is similar to him? We forget this. And finally, I want to tell you about something which we have abandoned: the importance of dreams in therapy. All this nonsense about Freud, as one writer says, if he's a Freudian, a man saw a cow in his dream, and he saw himself feeding the cow grass. He said to him, oh, this is not a cow, this is only symbolic. As Freud said, the unconscious is active during your sleep. But it will not show you your sexual behavior in a way that will disturb your sleep. It will come as a symbol. Your mother, the cow is a symbol of your mother. And then feeding the cow grass is actually something sexual. Now, this is nonsense. Dreams have a meaning. It's not such a terrible meaning as Freud has put it. It has others. And even people who are not Muslim even, they can see dreams that come exactly true. Abraham Lincoln saw a dream in which he is assassinated and the body is taken into a special room in the White House with a guard. And then he was assassinated, and he was put in the same room that he described to his wife and to his friends. A scientist working to prove that hormones, neurohormones, have a role in the connection between nerve cells, and he did try to prove this and worked on it for a long time, and he failed and failed and failed until he was in despair, and he left the experiment. He forgot it. After about 12 or 13 years, a dream comes to him to show him how he can prove it. He ran to the laboratory and did what he saw in the dream, and he proved that connections can be of a chemical nature, and he received the Nobel Prize for his work. I think his name is Levy or something like this. So dreams have a meaning. We cannot deny the importance of dreams. We need to ask the patient. Psychoanalysts would ask the patient to write his dreams, and then they will explain it to him in this immoral manner, mostly. But we need to ask our patients also. Now, Muslim therapists, even those in Islamic psychology, they forget the importance of dreams. I know some of my patients, the reason why they became still psychologically disordered is because of a dream. And some of them, a good dream would change their view. And some of them, their dreams will tell them what will happen in the future. Wallahi, I have one friend, may Allah bless his soul. He used to tell me the dream, and then immediately I can see it happens in real life. At one time, he was sitting with me, and somebody will be coming, somebody will come and will say so, and say, come in and say so. And he told me about seeing me in a country with people wearing in such a manner, and I did not really care much for the dream. But when I went to Malaysia, I remembered all what he said to me. This accordingly we need, but you should always try to explain the dream in a good manner, in an optimistic manner for the patient. But it is important to bring it in. This is something I think it will be new in the field of Islamic psychology. Few people talk about it. The Prophet ﷺ used to talk about dreams and to ask, when he comes to Fajr prayer, he will ask the Sahaba, did anyone see a dream? And then he would try to interpret the dream. I think I will just say one story, which many people may not believe it, but I believe it. I believe it fully, not only because it is authenticated by I don't know, by Muslim or Bukhari or so. Not only this, but because it has happened to me with somebody. What happened? This Sahabi, Ali ibn Abi Talib, karram Allah wajhah, he saw a dream during the time in which Umar ibn al-Khattab was Khalifa. He saw a dream that the Prophet was still alive in the mosque. and that he woke up and went to Fajr prayer, and a woman comes with a tray of dates. And then the Prophet began to give the dates to the Sahaba, to give everyone a date. So he gave Ali ibn Abi Talib one date. So he said in the dream, Ali quickly ate the date. And he asked the Prophet, please give me more. And the Prophet said, no, I will not give you, it's enough for you one day. And continued distributing the dates. Then he woke up. It was the azan of Fajr. He went to the mosque. And Umar ibn al-Khattab is the Imam. After Umar ibn al-Khattab prayed Fajr with them, a woman came with a tray of dates and put it in front of Umar ibn al-Khattab and told him, distribute it to the Sahaba. So he started to distribute date by date. But then he gave Ali one date. Then Ali said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, please give me more. But Umar ibn al-Khattab said to him, if the Prophet gave you more yesterday, I would have given you more. What does that mean? Spiritual. It means Umar ibn al-Khattab knew that Ali saw a dream, so and so and so. Is it possible for a person to know the dream of another person? Yes. I say yes because, as I said, it happened to me personally. Thank you very much.